Welcome to Aspire Johnson County's podcast, the Johnson County Business Insider, where you will hear storytelling and interviews spotlighting the people, projects, and policies driving Johnson County, Indiana's growth. From this, you will gain insights into business, workforce, public policy, and community development around Johnson County. We're excited to share that the Johnson County Business Insider podcast is presented in 2026 by Citizens Bank.
This podcast is brought to you by Citizens Bank. Citizens Bank, serving South Central Indiana since 1931. Building strong communities one relationship at a time. Learn more at citizens-banking.com.
Today, we're joined by Brian Peters with Coffeehouse Five, a for-benefit enterprise. Coffeehouse Five has 3 locations in Johnson County, having steadily grown since 2014 to not only caffeinate every corner of the county, but provide marriage and addictions counseling. I'm your host, Angela Vandersteen, Vice President of Investor Development and Relations at Aspire Johnson County. Brian, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
My first question has to be the name. How did you come up with the name Coffeehouse Five?
Well, that was a rather extended process with my family. At that time, our kids were, we had 2 in high school and 1 that was in elementary school still at the time. So we asked the kids to throw in their opinions on what the name should be, and we got lots of odd things. But eventually, we landed on this idea of Coffeehouse Five for really 2 reasons. One is the initial concept was that we had kind of 5 key components of what we wanted to do in terms of offering marriage counseling, addictions counseling, premarital counseling, mentor couple training, and supporting other nonprofits in the community.
Okay.
So there are 5 pieces to that. So that was a part of it. I would have to say, though, the bigger thing was just our entire family loves to read. We're all about great authors, and we wanted to just kind of highlight an Indiana author, Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five. So it's just a play on that name.
Yeah, that's great. I learned about that when you guys won the Aspire Business Success Award back in 2023. So I didn't know that story. And honestly, I'm somewhat in existence thanks to the Vonnegut family. My dad worked for Vonnegut's Hardware. And when they transferred him to a different store, it was down the strip mall from where my mom worked.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So I'm a little bit of a Vonnegut's fan because of that. Well, Coffeehouse Five grew out of your personal journey through crisis and reconciliation. Can you share the moment when your personal story transformed into a calling to help other families?
I don't know that there's any particular moment that I can pinpoint. It was a process, a journey that I don't know that I necessarily would have chosen for myself. It's almost as if it was chosen for me.
Okay.
But just through the whole process of, going through recovery, I'm a recovering alcoholic, going through that process of getting sober, then going through counseling with my wife and I, and kind of rebuilding our marriage. And then we just quite literally had people begin to show up on our doorstep and ask for help. And we didn't know what to do at that point other than share our story of what we'd been through. But then that whole process of doing more of that, sharing our story more, eventually drew me into full-time ministry, changing professions, going back to school. And so it's just this long, extended process, and it at each point, God kind of said, okay, this is the next step. This is where we're going. So I never had any kind of grand vision or idea of where this was headed. I was just kind of following each step along the path.
That's interesting. How did those experiences shape your vision for what Coffeehouse Five would become?
Well, I think the biggest piece of it was through, as I said, I changed professions, left the practice of law, went back to seminary and got a seminary degree, and joined staff at a local church, Community Church of Greenwood. And when I was on staff there, got drawn more and more into the counseling, marriage counseling, addictions counseling. In particular, in the area of marriage counseling, I encountered lots of couples who probably waited too long to get help.
Okay.
Now, I have yet to encounter a couple that I would say there's no hope for. But there were a lot of couples that, they knew they were in trouble, they knew they needed help, but they just wait. And the longer you wait, unfortunately, the more that bitterness takes root. And bitterness is the biggest challenge in terms of reversing the course of a marriage that's in trouble. So I started to do some research and investigation into what are the barriers to counseling? Why do people wait to get help? And there are two big barriers that jumped out at me. One is very obvious. I think that we all recognize, and it's simply cost.
Right.
Mental health counseling is not cheap, and everybody has to make decisions on the basis of finances. And so people know that they need help, but they've also got to pay bills. Mm-hmm. So it's just a tough decision to make. So that's the number one barrier. The second barrier may not be as obvious, but it was there, and that, unfortunately, is the church. The traditional church really does present a barrier to people, kind of raising their hand and saying, we need help. So those two things are what really launched me into exploring, okay, what can we do to remove these barriers and find a way to get help to people who need it.
Would you also say there's still a stigma to asking for help, and that maybe that stigma is stronger when it is asking for help for your marriage or your family?
Yes, absolutely. And again, especially in the context of the traditional church, because, and as I said, I was on staff at a local church. I was there for 10 years, and so I'm not in any way casting aspersions on the local church, but it's just the church puts out this kind of atmosphere of people are here because they have it all together, because, they're doing well. And so it's hard in that kind of an environment for people to step forward and say, we don't have it all together, we need help.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of the environment of the local church and why it's hard for people to ask for help.
Okay. Many businesses start with a financial goal, but Coffeehouse Five started with a mission. What made a coffee shop the right vehicle for offering free counseling and recovering services?
I would say there were two big reasons for that. Number one, as we've just been talking about, the environment, just the feeling that you create for people that they walk into helps them or hinders them from asking for help. So, coffee shops are known as a place that is laid back, that's comfortable and relaxing. And so we wanted to kind of pick up on that vibe and try to create a space that is welcoming, that's open to everyone, and that makes it easier to ask for help. So that's kind of the big reason. But in a lot of ways, there's a much less practical reason for it. And it's simply that, back to my family again, my family's had a lot of impact and influence on this whole process. We just all love hanging out in coffee shops and love drinking coffee. And we thought, hey, why don't we just start a coffee shop? And that's what will support us as we do this mission. Okay,
great. Approximately, can you tell us how many people or couples you've been able to help?
I get that question, and I always have to go back and tally things, and it's a hard one because I didn't do a great job in the early years of keeping records. Okay. But, we're well over 500 couples and individuals that we've worked with over the years.
That's amazing.
And it, one of the things you in doing this work, you kind of wonder sometimes, are we having an impact? What's happening? I was struck and reminded, and kind of, I guess I needed it to keep going in this. A couple of years ago here in the Greenwood Holiday Festival, we had a booth set up, and I was there for a while and just watching people walk around, and I was struck by the number of couples that walked by that I had worked with at some point over the course of the years, and that was really gratifying for me to see that.
I'm sure it was.
We are having an impact.
That's great. That's great. So Coffeehouse Five operates as a for-benefit business. You funnel your profits into the counseling services that you provide. How did you land on that model, and what have been the biggest advantages and challenges?
The idea behind the model and the term, for benefit is not a technical term. It's not a legal term. We just wanted to use that. We actually found, I don't even remember, it was some organization on the West Coast that was using that term for their business. I don't even know what they were doing at this point. I don't remember. But the idea, of course, is most businesses exist and they're called for-profit corporations because they exist to generate a profit. We exist to benefit the community. So we wanted to call ourselves a for-benefit organization. Again, not a legal term, but it's just how we refer to ourselves. We're here for the benefit of the community. That's why we exist. And so, the positives of that, of course, are there's a uniqueness to that that helps us brand ourselves, identify ourselves to the community. People recognize us because we're a little bit different. Certainly the challenges, of course, are as a not-for-profit organization where we take all of the profits and we try to funnel them into the mission. It's a constant struggle in terms of just maintaining things and keeping things going and taking care of our staff in the way that we want to. And, it like any other business, I mean, we're no different. We're facing the daily struggles of paying the bills, keeping the staff, keeping good people going.
Right. Yeah. So unlike traditional nonprofits that rely heavily on donations, your business sustains its counseling program through sales. How has this self-sustaining model impacted your reach and stability over the years?
I sometimes wonder, what would have happened had we gone the more traditional nonprofit route of raising funds. But we, and when I say we, specifically my wife and I, very intentionally chose not to go that route. Having been involved in Christian ministry, worked with and seen a lot of other nonprofit Christian ministries, and the amount of time that they had to spend on fundraising, we didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. We wanted to be spending our time helping people, not raising funds. So that's why we chose this route of trying to operate a business to support ourselves rather than directly raising the funds. Mm-hmm. And I do think, there are positives and negatives to that. The positives being, as I said, we don't spend time raising funds. Of course, we do have to spend time generating the profits through the business. So, at this point, as I look back on it, good and bad, it could go either way. I think it comes down to, what's the heart of an individual in terms of the choice they make as to how to proceed with their mission.
You mentioned the business that you copied that for benefit category or categorization from. Did you have any businesses that you modeled after that are also doing similar, where they have a product or service they sell that supports their mission?
No. Back when we got started, we did a little bit of research and looking around. I didn't really see anybody using this model.
Okay.
And I'm sure they're out there. We just didn't find any. So we just kind of created it on our own. Since starting, we've had, numerous people come to us and ask for direction and insight into how we do it. And so there are a lot of other people that are interested in using this model.
Yeah. And when you talked about the time spent in the fundraising, anybody who's worked in nonprofit spaces before and understand that, if they're thinking of starting a venture, I'm sure this really resonates with them, this model.
Yeah. And as I said, I understand that part of it. And there does seem to be, wow, you mean we could do this and fulfill our mission without raising funds? Yes, but of course the trade-off is you've got to find that business that's going to support you, and how much effort do you have to put into that business to raise those funds. So it's all about raising the funds one way or the other.
Right. So customers know that every cup contributes to a greater cause. How has that community-focused mission influenced customer loyalty and brand identity?
Well, certainly the brand identity, I think we've talked about that a little bit, but our ability to kind of market ourselves as something a little bit unique in the community helps people know who we are, and that certainly has helped. In terms of loyalty, people these days really are looking for, they want to put their money into not just buying a product, but buying a product that does something with those funds. And I think that's a great thing that people are looking around for that. And so obviously that helps us a lot because people, as they understand that we're not just about selling a cup of coffee, we're about using those funds to help people in the community, then they attach to us and they become loyal to us.
So there's a balancing act that you have to accomplish, balancing the business side with the counseling mission. How do you make sure on a regular basis, how do you sustain being able to balance that?
Well, on the business side, we are, as I said, no different from any other for-profit business. And we really have maybe at times even overemphasized that because if we're going to have funds available to help people with marriage and addictions counseling, we have to generate funds. We have to generate a profit. In order to generate a profit, we have to offer a good product. And so we really focus on, we want to be not just a for-benefit coffee house. We want to be the best coffee house in the community. And so we emphasize that heavily with our staff that we're, it's great that we're doing this mission. That's what we're about. But first and foremost, we have to produce a good product and we have to create a great atmosphere and we have to provide great customer service for our customers.
And the coffee market is competitive.
Right.
So how have you been able to stand out? Really, what differentiates your products from the others?
We have chosen to focus on producing everything in-house, which for independent coffee shops is a challenge. And, most coffee shops, and we did this when we got started, our products came from outside. We would purchase pastries. We were purchasing our beans for our coffee from a roaster in Madison, Wisconsin. But from the beginning, we knew we wanted to transition to bringing that all in-house so that we could control the quality, so that we could market the fact that we do everything in-house. So, over the course of the first several years, we made that transition. So now we produce everything in-house. All of our food items are baked in our kitchen in Franklin. We roast our beans in our roastery in Franklin. We are I think one of the only local coffee shops that roasts in-house. So again, just in terms of that brand identity
right.
and standing out as being unique, that's how we've chosen to do it.
Going back to, you mentioned others coming to you and asking, hey, how do I set up a model like this? What would you say is the one piece of advice you give out to entrepreneurs who are looking to have a similar model?
The thing that I start with everybody that comes to us, people that want to do this have a great heart. They want to help people.
Right.
Most of the time, they haven't gotten beyond that big idea. I want to help people. The question is how. I feel like what has allowed us to be successful and what I think other organizations that want to do this need to focus on is that you have to be very specific about your mission. It has to be very focused so that you can communicate it and so that the community can understand it. So, oftentimes we get people who say, well, I just want to start a coffee shop. I want to serve the community. How do you want to serve the community? It has to go beyond that. It has to be more specific. There has to be a particular mission that you're funding with this organization.
We shared at the beginning that your Greenwood location opened in 2014, and we talked about the expansions into Franklin and Bargersville. What is next for Coffeehouse Five?
Well, that's a good question. And a timely question because I'm at that point right now.
Are we getting breaking news?
No, because we're in the early stages of asking the question. All along, I've never had a grand vision for this thing. I've never had a 10-year plan or a 5-year. I've never even had a 1-year plan. It has always been, okay, God, what's the next step? We'll do one thing and then just kind of say, okay, what's next for us? And, I'm at that point right now. What's next for Coffeehouse Five? We're just asking that question, exploring some options. We've got a couple of things that we're looking at.
Okay.
May have some breaking news shortly.
All right. Well, give us a call when you do. We
yeah.
want to know. So any other business ventures outside the Coffeehouse Five brand that you're looking into?
No. I've got enough on my plate as it is, just trying to run the coffee shop and do the roasting and do the counseling. So I don't have time for anything else.
Okay. What do you think will be your legacy?
That's an interesting question. And at my age, I'm nearing my 65th birthday. I have been thinking about that personally. And I guess, ultimately, I hope that my legacy, using that word, because I would like for my legacy to be one of hope.
Okay. That's great.
It's one of the things that I communicate, do my best to communicate to the couples and individuals that I work with, that there is hope. People find themselves in these situations that seem hopeless. And I was there 35 years ago in my own life. But there is hope. I was able, with the help of God and lots of other people, to see my life turn around, to see my marriage turn around. And so I always believe that there's hope.
What are some current drink trends that you can share?
We are exploring. There are some interesting new syrups, additions to coffee. People like to put things in their coffee. There are some very odd things that are on the horizon right now. For instance, one that we're exploring is a mountain pine cold brew.
Ooh.
So look for that coming in the near future. The cold brew market continues to expand. Cold drinks, we in this industry, unfortunately, we kind of follow along with the trends that Starbucks continues to set. Starbucks overwhelmingly sells cold drinks. And so customers are asking for more and more cold drink offerings. So cold drinks are kind of where things are going.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions. What are you selling more of, hot or iced drinks?
During the winter, obviously, we still do a good amount of hot drinks. Okay. And we like to, again, because we roast in-house, we like to promote our beans. And, I do everything to push people actually to black coffee. Okay. Just because I love, if you're willing to take the challenge and spend the time and explore, just the wide variety of taste options that are available in straight black coffee, can really be a great experience. But yeah, cold drinks, we sell more cold drinks than hot drinks.
Okay. What about the difference between coffee versus tea?
Well, coffee is still our overwhelming favorite. But our tea sales did pick up. We have a local herbalist that we use in Franklin, Katsu Teas. So we use her teas, and people really love that tea. So we do sell a fair amount of tea as well. But coffee is still the big product.
Yeah. Well, my favorite is the Lavender London Fog. Yeah. And a coworker nicknamed it a hug in a mug. And I know I am going to accidentally order a hug in a mug one day.
We may have to change it to that.
We might have to change it to that. Well, business ideas come from the realization of a need combined with a passion to fulfill that need. And Coffeehouse Five is a great example of how to combine the two and be successful. Brian, thank you so much for joining us and openly sharing your story.
Yeah, I'd love being here. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank again our sponsors for making this conversation possible.
This podcast is brought to you by Citizens Bank. Citizens Bank, serving South Central Indiana since 1931. Building strong communities one relationship at a time. Learn more at citizens-banking.com.
Aspire's Johnson County Business Insider podcast is presented by Citizens Bank. That is it for this episode of the Johnson County Business Insider. I'm your host, Angela Vandersteen. Join us next time.